Okay, so today we're doing another Dear Authors, and we're talking specifically about death scenes. I've read through almost all the comments. I collected the things that were upvoted the most or repeated the most frequently. So if you don't know, Dear Authors is a series that I do where I post a community tab, ask about a specific subject, and a bunch of people give their opinions. And it's kind of a collection, at least within my corner of the internet, of readers chatting with readers about what we like and don't like. I'm going to kick it off with the most upvoted comment, which I'm only showing the beginning of the comment because it hits on several things, and a lot of these things were repeated. So I'm just going to hit the beginning of it so that we can unpack that, and then we'll keep moving on. It's very unrealistic when a character is killed in the middle of the battle scene and our main characters stop fighting to mourn them and cry. Like, you don't just stop fighting in the middle of a battle. And of course their opponents will be like, oh no, their friend just died and there's a golden chance to kill them while their guard is down. But no, I'll be a nice person and let them mourn in peace. That doesn't happen. You let your guard down and you're dead. So I think this is one of those things where it translates fine to movie, but in book format, it doesn't work. I don't really watch that many movies, but I've seen some, and it's not an uncommon thing from what I've seen to slow things down. Your friend just died in battle. Slow down the frame rate of the film, play sad music, show them turning at them and going, no, etc. And that can work in film because you can take a moment of your heart dropping, of the characters just letting their guard down and crying for a second, and you can drag that out for minutes and have the viewers really feel the impact of that moment. And then speed things back up to normal speed, and they have to spin back around and keep fighting. But in a book, you can't slow down time like that. Every minute feels like a minute to the reader. And slowing down time, or more frequently, just taking a minute to mourn, always draws me out of the book as well. I really agree with this comment, because anytime a character dies in battle or in a fight or in any instance where there's high stakes surrounding it, and then the characters pause to have a long internal monologue, to cry, to drop to their knees, to sob over the body, whatever it is that they're doing, I can't soak in that moment because all that's going through my head is, there's people that are around you that are trying to kill you right now. Get up. What are you doing? And then if they don't die, if they sink over a body and cry and I get like paragraphs or even pages of mourning and they don't die while they're mourning, I don't believe you. And it ruins the impact of the death for me. The same thing happens off topic. The same thing happens for taking a minute in battle to say some nice last words, or to finally have that heart-to-heart about how you really feel about each other, or whatever. Anytime we're in the middle of a high-stakes moment and we stop to do something, I don't really soak in that moment because all I'm thinking about is everything around you. It's like, remember the Avatar movie? When there were like several scenes of action where our main characters would be fighting one-on-one, and then everybody else in the surrounding circle would just shuffle their feet and wait until it's their cue to rush forward. That's what I imagine in books whenever our main characters pause to mourn, to reflect, to have a nice conversation, to do whatever, and they don't die or at the very least get injured. My immediate thought is everybody just standing around shuffling their feet? What's happening? What's going on with the ring of people that are trying to kill them? Don't make a huge and big scene where people are crying and they're crying their eyes out because someone died, and it's supposed to be devastating for our characters. But on the next page, they act like nothing happened and are like, you died? Oh, anyway. I've brought this up several times, but there have been books that I've read that I actually thought were quite good and that are well received, and they didn't work for me, even though I liked a lot of things that happened. Specifically, they didn't work for me because of this reason. If a character just experiences some devastating, traumatic, horrifying experience, like, let's say, watching someone get slaughtered in front of them, especially someone they care about. And then they just kind of move on and either talk about it really casually from that point forward, or they don't seem affected by it. They just move on and don't think about it. Like, we're in their head. They don't think about it. They don't talk about it. They don't do anything until plot dictates we need to talk about it again, and then they bring it up, and then they have something to say, and then they seem to forget about it again. I can't deal with that. You don't have to go into Brandon Sanderson level emotional turmoil, getting really deep into their head while they're dealing with stuff. You don't have to go all out, but if a character doesn't seem to have PTSD from extremely traumatic situations, or even just seem affected by it at all, it actually does kind of ruin a book for me, because I don't believe you. I don't believe that the character feels nothing unless they're written this way. They're supposed to be disconnected from their feelings, then that's fine. But I'm not going to believe that a character that I'm supposed to relate to, root for, or is supposed to be a normal person is not going to be affected by certain events and just forget about it next page. How long can someone actually say their farewells while dying? These people with 10 stab wounds seem to talk for a while. This is one of the most frequently commented things. So many people had opinions about long deathbed monologues. And I do agree. A lot of times, I guess I don't see this as often anymore, but it does still come up where someone is dying and then they have their final words. They need to tell you that secret they've been keeping this whole time. They need to let you know how they feel. Maybe they have that special piece of information that we need in order for our plot to move, and they're going to give it with their final breath, or many breaths, depending on how long it takes to say it all. And again, when this happens, it really affects my reading experience, because sometimes I'm just sitting there reading this long monologue thinking, man, you sure do have a lot of breath with that punctured lung. Isn't there a knife? Isn't there a gaping wound where your lung is? Aren't your lungs collapsing? You got a lot to say? Following that up with this, not to be morbid, hey, you're the one who made this, but if a character was stabbed through a vital organ, instead of saying their goodbyes, they should be coughing and vomiting up blood. So it's up to the tone of the story, naturally. Not everybody is writing grimdark, and not everybody wants a really gruesome death in their book. But having some realism in the death scenes is nice sometimes, a lot of times. If that side character over there got stabbed in a specific place and then died instantly, and then this character over here got stabbed in the exact same place, but it's gonna take them a long time to die. Why? Because they're a main character. It is kind of rough. Or they have some other kind of mortal wound, and they're somehow able to drag out their death to give us the scene we really don't want. Now, don't get me wrong, dragging out a death can be really effective. Having us believe that a character could survive and making them suffer for a while, oh, I sound so bad. Or also just making them survive to increase tension, to get the hope up of the reader as well as the main character. Something that feels natural and not forced, and then eventually we still have to reckon with the death when we had a little bit of hope. This can be done really well too, but just make it realistic and make it consistent. Killing off side characters for something and then not killing a main character for the exact same thing, or giving a character some intense wound that they would definitely die from and then they don't, or they take forever, or they deliver a long monologue with a punctured lung. It draws me out of the story. It really makes me stop and think, no, that doesn't really make sense. Keeping with the theme of realism, I find it odd how in most death scenes, no one attempts any kind of first aid. I won't spend a lot of time on this because it's pretty self-explanatory, but this is also something that I've thought about a lot, where sometimes, I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes people are in shock and they're not thinking, and they have the ability to save them, but they freeze up, or they just don't think of the right things to do because their mind is all over the place. And that's fine if that's what's depicted. But again, just making reactions realistic is really great. I mean, having someone kneeling over a body, trying to stop the bleeding, trying to apply a tourniquet, trying to do something, and they still die can add a lot of impact. The best death scenes, as in terribly heartbreaking and touching, is when a death brings the other characters together to mourn. Nothing gets me more than a character breaking down immediately or a long time after the events, and some of his best friends being there to help him. So we've already talked about if there's a high-stakes situation like a battle and someone dies and then everything stops so we can mourn, it draws a lot of people out of the story. This is not contradicting that. This is talking about either not in a high-stakes situation where there's time to mourn, or if somebody falls and all they can do is just scream and then turn back and keep fighting, and then after the battle is done, searching through bodies to try to find their friend while sobbing, or just staring blankly and having nothing to say and then breaking down days later. Or however it plays out, whether it be in the moment because they can, or whether it be a while later because they weren't able to in the moment, or because they just shut down and it didn't hit them until later, which is very realistic to happen. Taking the time to mourn is so important. There were several comments as well about a character death gets a sentence and then we move forward. And even if it's something like in battle, giving them more than a sentence is good for the reader so that we have a second to process, and then maybe we'll keep going and then come back to it. But the point is, give the readers and the characters time to process and to deal. A lot of times, for me personally, a lot of times people reacting to death is way more impactful than the death itself. Someone might die that I don't even care about that much, but because they were important to the main character, I care about this death. There's a lot of examples I want to give, but I'm trying really hard not to spoil. Or it could be someone that I do care about. I see their death, it hurts me, I don't appreciate it, and then I see other characters I care about being absolutely broken over this. They could turn evil over this death, they could rise up over this death, or they could just be a human and not react in any way other than sobbing. And it will hurt me. It will hurt me so much more to see the pain of the characters I care about as well. On the note of painful deaths, a death for a lost cause, like a death in a battle that was pointless, or a sacrifice that meant nothing at all, are the most heartbreaking. Again, I really want to give examples, but I won't. But a death that it could have been avoided if character X hadn't made this mistake, or they rushed in to do something and then people died along the way, but the point is we're going to save this person. The point is we're going to stop this person. We're going to do whatever we need to do, and they all rush in ready to die. Some people we care about do die. And then they get there and the person isn't there, or the thing isn't there. Ouch. Also, too, something that came up a ton is people hating on the resurrection trope. I mean, I don't know, maybe I've just cultivated a certain environment here because it's one of my least favorite tropes of all time, but a lot of people don't like it, so we can talk about it. A lot of people said, if you kill them, leave them dead, don't steal the stakes from me by just bringing people back, and now I don't trust any death, and now I can't mourn over anything. I've ranted about it a lot, I'll stop there. But something that a few people brought up is that our main character, or one of our main characters, can have those thoughts of, I wish they could come back, or even if it's a thing in this world, to say maybe they would come back, maybe they can come back, only to find out that no, they can't. Or even to have the main character or main characters have moments of something great happening later on in the book, and then they want to rush off to tell their friend. but their friend isn't there, or something that they used to do together that is now something they have to do alone. Bringing back those little recollections throughout it so that it's like a fresh wave of pain for the characters that have lost someone. It's realistic. That's what life is, man. Mourning isn't a day. It doesn't end after a week. It's fresh waves every time you remember you want to do something with them and they're not there. And I'm going to end it on this one. Don't ever introduce a character, especially a love interest, midway through your book/series specifically so that you can kill off that character and then focus the impact on your protagonist. Readers can tell when you're doing that. Sometimes we can even see the death coming. It's infuriating. So yeah, some of my favorite books have done this, and I won't say, but it is not great when that happens. This happens a lot with love interests, but any side character is introduced, and it's so obvious sometimes when it's like, well, this person can't continue on with us after this book because of X, Y, and Z that's already been established. So they're here just for us all to fall for them so that they can die and we can learn some lesson or feel some impact. Not everybody sees that stuff coming. One book in particular I'm thinking of, Corey, my husband, read one of my favorite books and he did not see it coming. He was just like, oh, things have changed. We're just gonna add another crew member, even though it doesn't make sense that we would. And everybody's gonna live happily ever after. And it's like, no, it won't. So it's true that not every reader really, hyper analyzes everything like I do and like some readers do, but it's obvious when a character was just introduced so that you can develop some sort of attachment, so that that character can die, so that a death happened without having to kill someone that's actually significant to the story. We see it, we hate it. Really, I think a lot of it boils down to making deaths as realistic as possible, making stakes real. That's something that came up a lot. Not having a ton of plot armor for characters, not creating high tension situations at the very beginning of the book, but then everybody makes it out unscathed. Not only killing off some side character that nobody cares about so that it looks like there's consequences, but we all know that there was nothing impactful that really happened. But I really think that the most important thing is based on emotions. Not making deaths super hyper predictable and not just chucking deaths everywhere in the book just for shock or for impact, some sort of false impact. These things are important. Every reader is different. Not every reader is me. And not every reader requires death in a book. Some readers are really happy when their main characters make it out unscathed, so do what you want. But I think the biggest thing is going to be that if there is a death, especially a significant death, that we actually feel the impact, that main characters don't forget about it later on in the book or the next page, or forget about it for long stretches of time and have no feelings toward it, and then it comes back up later when plot dictates it should. Characters actually get a chance to mourn, but not in inappropriate places where they would die if they took the time to mourn. And I guess it's just one of those things where it's best to pull from real life experience of pain and of loss and write from that, as opposed to writing from what you've seen. Because there's a lot of emotionless deaths out there in books and movies. And I think this is one of those things where we all know what grief feels like. We all know what pain is. So writing from that core emotion that we all share is going to make us all relate. But writing from something that was really dramatic or cool or thematic somewhere else oftentimes will miss the mark. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'd love to continue talking about it in the comments. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.